Let's think about, I guess I don't need this. Let's think about what was the main goal of Kilpatrick and Krauthammer's analysis of the debate. That is not what we were thinking. What are they telling us about the debate? And does it suggest anything about evaluating arguments or how we should go about evaluating arguments? Think about what were the points that these guys were making. Let me see if I can get back there. Let's take a look first. Kilpatrick, what does he have to say? Well, we see the conclusion he's getting to, that Bush won, and he's suggesting that, the goal of a presidential debate is not for understanding the candidates' positions on the issue, but it's a chance to get to meet the president. Are you going to feel comfortable, or the future candidate who's going to be president? Are you going to feel comfortable with this guy? You're going to feel comfortable having this guy in the White House. I guess what Kilpatrick wants to think with, what do they call it? I think it's called the football, the codes to launch a nuclear attack. Are you going to feel that this guy really understands? Now, that's certainly one way of looking at a debate, and maybe a presidential debate, when you're looking at the presidential debate, it's the way you should be looking at it. Because to a large extent, there are other ways of finding out what the positions are that the candidates are taking. And even more, it's not clear the positions they're taking, how long they're going to last. So maybe you're looking, it's kind of like a job interview. Most job interviews aren't really tests of your skills, but rather it's how comfortable is the future employer going to feel with you. In this case, we, the people of the United States, are the future employers. And the question is, how comfortable are we with this particular candidate? Well, that's where Kilpatrick was on it. Now, Charles Krauthammer, the former Charles Krauthammer, not that there are two of them, it's just these were his old positions when he was a liberal, and he thought that Bush was not an appealing candidate. I'm not sure if he changed his mind about that. He was not impressed with at the time, the vice president's answers, the way he looked, and he thought the caucus was better. But again, he's talking about whining, looking nervous. The caucus knocked Bush around the ring. It makes you sit down and think, what is the purpose of the debate? Or if we're looking at an argument, what are our goals in looking at an argument? Now, at least in looking at the debate and in their analysis of who won and lost the debate, the idea was we're going to decide who the winner was based on who looked better, who made the best impression. It's almost like a dating game, a TV dating game. Who did you feel most comfortable with? And that's how you're going to decide who you're going to vote for president, the leader of the world. Who had the better demeanor, elocution, style? Those are the criteria that they're using. But I think they might be more that you have in mind when you're choosing about the president. You're going to want to make sure that the guy makes good decisions, that are good for the country, not just good for a particular person. So while this makes a lot of sense, maybe in understanding debates, presidential debates, one of the goals in the presidential debate is to have a good ad. It's an advertising campaign. Are you going to get more buyers? Now, when we're thinking about arguments, certainly we want to think about getting buyers, but is that the ultimate goal of the argument? Because here the factors that we're looking at are what's called and what Feldman describes in the book. And I want you to take a look in the book and read rhetorical power. He cites the Declaration of independence as something that has great rhetorical power. That is, it's emotional. It catches you in the gut. It's persuasive. But the question that we really need to answer is, when we're evaluating an argument, when we're looking at the reasons for believing something, for coming to a certain conclusion, is it our gut that's important? How we feel? How it makes us feel? That is, in this case, we're talking about, remember, and look at the title, reason versus emotion. What is the deciding factor here? Is it going to be reason or is it going to be emotion? Kilpatrick, Krauthammer's analysis have to do with emotion. Now, if you're looking at an argument, it's not at all clear when you're articulating, when somebody's giving you, articulating the reasons, that is, stating the reasons that are supposed to lead you to a certain belief, a certain other statement, a certain other conclusion. Why do they have to give you reasons if it's just your emotions? Why do they have to persuade you in that way? Rather, I think when we're looking at arguments and when we're going to evaluate the arguments, we're worried not about what's going on in our gut, but what's going on in our head. We're seeking the best answer. We're seeking the best answer to a question. Doesn't matter what the question is. If the question is what's the right position on politics, which sports team is going to win, what computer should I buy, what school should I go to, what profession should I go into, we're not worried when we're thinking about what makes sense. We're not going to worry, or we're not going to decide based on our emotions. And that doesn't mean that emotions are not going to be premises in our argument. That is, we're not going to we might very well have premises in arguments that say, gee, such and such makes me feel good, makes me feel comfortable, and from that we're going to conclude, well, that's the position I want to take. But at least we're going to highlight that that is the reason that we're doing it, not somehow that we're stating a bunch of reasons that should affect our head and are really catching us in the gut. That is, we're trying to be objective about this, and we'll be talking about this a little bit more in a few minutes. We're trying to figure out what we should believe. What is rational for us to believe? Now, when you think about it, think about, when people talk about love, when they talk about hunger, are they talking about reason, rationality, or are they becoming slaves to their appetites? You see someone you're very attractive to, your hormones are raging, you're having these feelings, and there's nothing wrong with acting based on your feelings, at least sometimes. That is, don't get arrested for doing something wrong and tell them that my philosophy professor told me it's okay to act on my feelings. That's not what I'm telling you. That's not what you're learning in course. Primarily, we're trying to develop your power of reason. We're trying to get you to understand how reason works. And remember, you can factor in something about emotions, but it's factoring it from the perspective of reason. So what should we believe? What's rational for us to believe? Not if it makes us feel good to believe this, that's not a rational reason. That doesn't give us justification for believing anything. Now, when we evaluate argument based on this, we want to evaluate arguments, or this is kind of almost a command, evaluate the argument based on the strength of the reasons given for the particular conclusion. Before we saw Krauthammer and Kilpatrick evaluating the candidate on an emotional basis. And that does, and guys, don't kid yourself. That does, go on in life. You're going to go on job interviews, and people aren't going to make decisions based on somehow predicting your job performance. There, it's like picking their friends to a large extent. When you get down to, and my experience, and I've done this a lot, is when you get down to the last 5 or 10 candidates, there's not much, or there's not a really good way that you can figure out what the difference is between one or the other's capability and what they're going to do on the job, but rather usually you'll rely on things that the personnel people, the human relations calls, the fit to the organization. It's an emotional reaction to it. In this course, we're not talking about developing your emotions. You guys are pretty good at developing your emotions yourself. In this course, we wanted to develop your ability to reason. We want to be able to help you figure out how to evaluate your reasons and figure out what conclusions those reasons get you to. So we're looking at reason versus emotion. Emotion seems to be what the pundits, what the commentators focused in on in the political arena. So the question is reason versus emotion, and you can see reason is the dominant factor. Reason is what we're going to be developing.